I am delighted to introduce our keynote speaker for today. Dan Ammon is currently a Global Vice President of R&D at Regenity Bioscience. He earned his both undergraduate and graduate degrees here in our chemistry department, so bachelor's degree in 91, PhD in 1999. Did a little work at Kodak and then at Bausch & Lomb, both between degrees and during the PhD, and then stayed at Bausch & Lomb for another 11 years or so, where he rose through the ranks, brought multiple products to market. He then spent about another 11 years at Dentsply Sirona, again, leading teams, bringing products to market that impact, in that case, dental health. Over that time, his teams launched over 80 products and filed a comparable number of patents protecting those products. Currently, as Global Vice President of R&D at Regenity Bioscience, he works to develop other engineers and scientists to increase their impact on the healthcare industry. Regenity, as I understand it, is mostly a business-to-business company, right? So you're not buying Regenity products at the store, but your physician might be putting them in you if you need them, which is important. In addition to being named a Fellow of the National Academy of Engineering, Dan is a Fellow of AIMBE and a board member for the Surfaces in Biomaterials Foundation. With that, I hope we can give Dan a warm welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the kind introduction. It is really an honor and a pleasure to be here at my alumni to give a presentation on some work I did at Dentsply Sirona from 2017 to 2020. But before I get started, I just want to congratulate the two students who did a really great job. I'm going to have to say that Vin threw me off a little bit with this presentation. He mentioned that contact lenses were plasma-treated PDMS contact lenses. I was the one that did that in 1992 and 93. So it was like, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he just said that. And so I have to ask Vin, do you know what the first plasma-treated contact lens was? I don't. You don't? Okay, so the first plasma-treated contact lens was in the 1980s. Bausch & Lomb bought a platinum-initiated PDMS, a product from a big chemical company. And they made a contact lens, they plasma treated it. It was for premature babies to protect their cornea as they matured. So that was the first plasma treated contact lens. Everything that he talked about, I experienced in my first 10 years of my career, except for the aluminum part. But and then when we looked at our silicate islands on the PDMS contact, they were flexible. So you asked the question if they're flexible. Okay. So we did AFM and looked at force curves. And so that's kind of what we did there. So anyways, it was a great talk, and it brought me back, a long time. Let's just put it that way. So today I'll be talking about 3D printed digital dentures. And basically it's a customized medical device. Dentures have been made the same way for over 100 years. In 1914, these two gentlemen created the first traditional denture workflow. It sounds like it's pretty easy, but it's really not. You basically take an impression, you make a custom mold, and then you make the denture from that custom mold. Along the way, they're taking a lot of measurements, and the patient has to go to the dental chair 6 to 7 times during this process. Dentists don't want to do dentures because 6 or 7 times in the chair, it's a lot of time and a lot of money, but they do it. And so our story starts, I was asked to tell a lot of stories today. There was an audible that Mark gave me last night. So if anybody watches football, it was an audible. I said, okay, I can do that. So the adventure started in February of 2017. Myself and some scientists and engineers went to corporate. We had a meeting with the CEO, the CSO, and the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, and said, hey, gave a presentation on the digital dentures, 3D printing, and said, we need $10 million and we need 2.5 years to do it. And the answer could not have come quicker. It was a no. And the reason it was a no is because it was February and the budget had just started. Nobody has any extra money. So, okay, you have to respect that. They said, come back. So we came back 3 times during the summer. The first time we came back, we gave the presentation, said we need $10 million, we need 2.5 years. The chief scientific officer said the printer technology is just not there. It's not isotropic. It needs to be isotropic. We said, well, there's a startup in California called Carbon. They 3D print isotropic parts. We think it'll work. And of course he said, prove it. Okay, that's what we do. We're scientists, we're engineers, we have to prove things. And we know better. It's just that Carbon will not make us prototypes without paying a fee, a large fee. So we went back to Carbon and said, we really need prototypes or we're not going to get this funded. So they made prototypes. So like I said, we went back 2 more times in the summertime. They now believe that we could do this. They said, come back in November. So, all right, so I went back in November by myself, sitting in the room with the 3 executives. And I walked in the room and they were smiling. So I said, okay, I was still expecting a no. And they said, you're going to get your $10 million, but you have to do it in 2 years, not 2.5 years. So collar got a little tighter and said, okay, yep, we can do that. And then towards the end of the meeting, the CEO turned to me and he says, do you realize what you're trying to do? And I think I know the answer, but I also think it's a little bit of a trick question. So I said, what? And he said, you're trying to take 100 years of innovation, and in 2 years, you're gonna change it out. You really think you can do that? There's only one answer you can say. You just got the money. Say, yes, of course. Of course we can do that. And then he asked me, and this is, I'll translate the next sentence in a minute, but do you really think you can do it? He said, yes, we can do that. And so when he says, do you really think you can do it? He was saying, we're giving you $10 million. You better come back with a product in 2 years. So that's what kind of the corporate talk that was going on there. And so just to be clear, we'll be talking about the denture base, the pink ink that we're talking about here. At the time, there were inks out there for 3D printed teeth. They were not very good. We'll talk about that. And ours weren't very good as well. So when we talk about teeth, and we actually had to make molded teeth that worked in a 3D printed process, okay? So we're just getting started here. All right, so just to reiterate what we talked about with the corporate leaders, this is new teeth. Again, this will be molded teeth. And just so you guys know, the molded teeth are actually molded in 3 layers. That gives it its beautiful aesthetics, and the material gives you your wear component. And every time you come up with a new tooth line, it's about $1 million in molds. Because you're going to create 1 layer, then you pull off a mold, put another mold in, create another layer and another layer. And so it's very expensive to come up with new molded teeth. We have a new digital workflow, new techniques, new tooth libraries. So what you have to do to create tooth libraries is you have to take real life living, in this world, molded teeth, and you have to digitize them and put them in the digital world. So you take a micro CT and you have to digitize all the tooth libraries you're gonna utilize when you go into the software to create your design. You can see there's holes in the design where the teeth are gonna fit. So you need to digitize the teeth. We have new materials, as you'll see, new indications and new partners. So we worked with Carbon to launch this product, and then since I've left the company in 2020, Dentsply Sirona work with Asiga, so now they have 2 validated printers for this product. So just a quick presentation overview, that was the background. So we'll talk about market dynamics, improving the denture experience for patients. We'll talk about the digital denture printing workflow. We'll spend a lot of time on that slide. Design software and libraries, the 5-component component system, and then the total product package. What I really loved about this project was the intersection of software, hardware, and materials. It was really cool because we learned about a lot and how they're all connected, and also how it gave us some hurdles to overcome. Okay, so let's talk about the market dynamics. We gave this presentation to the corporate leaders, at least we gave this slide, and in the market, we said the market is ripe for this type of innovation. So when you look at the market dynamics, we have an aging population that creates growth demand for dentures. The second graph is lab consolidation. Labs are also closing. You can see labs peaked around 2009, and today they peaked at like 12,500. Today there's only 5,000 labs. That's it. Crowns and bridges have gone digital as well through subtractive manufacturing, so there's efficiency there. And then finally, let me just tell you what a dental lab is. So basically, a dental lab is a place. It literally is a lab that there's materials, there's chemical components that come in. The dentist orders a denture, a crown, a bridge, a night guard, and aligners to align your teeth, and they assemble it from the components like Dentsply Sirona would sell them. Okay, that's what a dental lab is. So the dentist will order those from the dental lab. And so there's dental technicians at these labs putting these products, these medical devices together. And so the number of dental technicians peaked around 2005 at 45,000. Today there's only 35,100 of them. And there's only 35,100 of them because they're retiring. And not a lot of younger generation people want to go and become a dental technician. That's changing with the advent of 3D printing because now it's a little more technical, a little more fun to do. And so when you have an aging population, so you have more customers and you have less people making those products, it really screams efficiency. And that's what 3D printing brings to the table. So the value of 3D printing, again, capacity, scalability, automation, increased throughput. We'll go through each of those individually. Labor, so it's a decrease in labor time for sure. So that also helps with efficiency. It's plug and play. So basically we made the molded teeth with, it's not quite a Lego approach, but it's kind of a click-in approach where you really can't mess it up when you plug those in. Simple skill level to assemble. The price is really, really inexpensive relative to traditional denture materials. Minimize waste. So after you 3D print, you can actually pour the liquid back in, or you can just keep going and keep printing. We tested that you could pour back and it would last 6 months before you'd have any issues at all. And then you have inventory reduction, especially when you 3D print teeth. You have, I'll show you, you'll get an idea of how many teeth are in a series for dentures. But when you can 3D print them, you're just gonna have like 5 bottles. So it's really nice. And so just in case you guys were wondering, like the cost of everything, anybody curious about costs? So when Dentsply Sirona sells their materials to a dental lab, it's about $100. The dental lab creates the denture and they sell it to the dentist for $400 to $500. And then this is just one arch, not two. And then the dental lab sells it, the dentist sells it to a customer for $1,300 to $1,500. Now, if you take a step back and go, oh, that's a lot of money, but if there's 7 visits, they're making no money. So when you do 3D printing denture, we can reduce that to 2 or 3 visits, as you'll see in a second. All right, so capacity. So I don't know if I even need to explain this graph, but compression pack is traditional dentures, about 6 to 8 a day in an 8-hour shift. Milled came after compression pack, and it lasted about 3 years. And it was because of the efficiency. So you do subtractive manufacturing milling. It makes a great product, but you can only do 2 a day. And then the milling companies came up with puck exchangers. You have a pink puck, basically. Puck exchangers that they could go 24 hours. They didn't work well. They jammed overnight, and you had to come back in and start all over again. So then clearly, 3D printing was the way to go. 48 in an 8-hour day. And it's only one dental technician. And as you'll see, you'll need multiple other pieces of equipment when you get to the post-processing, but you only need one printer to do that much. And you can quickly imagine a dental lab ordering 10 of these and taking up all of the dentures in their region. And you can see other labs closing down. So when I gave this presentation at a dental meeting, I basically made the statement that, and you have to get in early on this one, because if you don't, there's gonna be nothing left at the end. So, all right, so some of the features of this easy workflow and system is low labor, it's high capacity printing. So again, you print 48 dentures a day. It exceeds ISO requirements for high impact resistance. Okay, so this has to do with fracture toughness. The ISO document says, if you have over 900 joules per meter squared fracture toughness, you're considered high impact, highly resistant to fracture toughness. If you're below that, you're low impact. And so if you're below, there's not a lot of products on the market that are low impact anymore, but if you are low impact, you can literally drop your denture from here and it'll break, no problem. So we were the third pink denture-based 3D printed on the market. The first 2 before us were low impact. And they literally spoiled the market. Everybody stopped using them because the dentures were coming back like crazy. And so when we actually launched our product, we had to heal the market and go back and say, no, this is high impact. It's really a great product. And it didn't take much. Once they got their hands on it, they realized it was a really great product. Teeth aesthetics and durability. You want the teeth to last a long time. We'll go through some wear data in a little while. No mixing, pour, and print. So the two competitors I mentioned earlier that launched their earlier products, you had to take a bottle like this, put it on a roller and mix it for 2 hours before you print it. So that's just not, that's not a real product. Unused material, we can recover, we can pour it back in a bottle, low waste. The two competitors before us, when they did their post-treatment, the post-UV treatment, they would put it in glycerol. That would reduce the amount of oxygen at the surface and you get a better surface cure. We used heat and UV, so we didn't need to do that in our post-cure oven, and we had a 3-year shelf life. We already kind of went over the advantages, and so the indications we had were for full dentures. So full over full means you have a denture on top and denture on bottom. A full denture, single full arch, it's over your one denture arch over your natural teeth, and then implant over denture, so you can put the dentures on implants as well. So you go in every 6 months to get those cleaned up. Okay, so for the patient, the benefits to the patient, it's always all about the patient. The fit for a traditional denture is about 400 microns, and it requires adhesive. You have unpredictable comfort, and you have limited food choices. I know that limited food choices sounds funny, but when your dentures don't fit, you're gonna have a hard time eating some foods, especially in public, and I personally have an uncle who experienced this as well. I'm gonna go over to the right for digital dentures. The fit is 500 to 100 microns. It is tight. You don't need any adhesive. In fact, you have to teach the patients how to remove it. You kind of have to stick your finger in and kind of pull it down. That's how well they fit. High comfort, broader food choices. Back over to under traditional dentures, the dental office visits are about 7 or more. And for 3D printed dentures, it's 2 or 3. And there's a reason why it's 2 or 3. It's usually 2, but if you decide to do, you'll see another step in the process, it'll be 3. And then finally, on the left-hand side, no save design. They make that mold and they throw it away. They can't save tens of thousands of molds. And so if you come back, you get a new one. And the cool thing about digital dentures is you have a preserved digital record. You can replace them. You can build another one, second set. And so the top 2 reasons why dentures get remade, one is you drop it, you break it, you run over it. The second one is dogs. So those are like the top 2. Those are the top 2. I'm not kidding. All right, so this is a 5-component system and plus a printer. So we use the carbon printer. We'll talk a little bit about that. But basically, we have an ink, we have a scanner, which we'll talk about what that does. So that takes, real-world polymers and digitizes them. We have a 3-component bonding system, and then we have our UV and heat oven that we do the final post-cure on. So I'll spend a little time on this slide. This is the whole complete workflow. So we start off with the workflow across the top here, and we have the materials across the bottom. And then down here we have the labor of the arch coming across for the machine time. We have the machine time starting in yellow, and then we have the labor that the dental technician is doing across the bottom. So we start off with a scan and a design. So there's actually 2 ways to scan. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically, you take your impression, you put it into a scanner. Now that digitizes your impression, and then that goes into your software. Now, this isn't a design software that students might use to design something brand new. These are modules made for dentures. There's a module made for implants. So there's all these different dental modules. So you bring in the STL file, and then you start designing the denture. You're putting in the holes where the teeth are going to go. You're lining the back of the dentures to line it with each other. Then that STL goes over to the printer. It prints up to 12 dentures at a time. We learned a lot about this with respect to accuracy and with the angle we need to print on, and to be able to make sure that those holes were open and usable. We had 2 inks, and that's where that 2 or 3 visit comes from. We have the pink ink, and if you only print the denture and you put it on, it's going to fit. But sometimes in a traditional approach, they do what's called a try-in denture. They can make adjustments to the try-in denture. You could rescan it and then reprint it. But what we found is after a dentist did 2 or 3, they realized they didn't need the try-in denture. So we'll talk about that later. Okay, so, and then you can wash and recycle. And you can see up here we're pouring the liquid back. You wash for 4 minutes in an ultrasonicator. I failed to mention that the print time is 2 hours. So that's really quick, actually. and then the scan time is only 30 minutes. So then you fuse and cure the teeth into each of the sockets. It's a three-step system. We'll go through the three-step system. And finally, you finish and polish. So with a denture only, it's about 60 minutes. And then with a try-in, it's an extra 10 minutes to polish that up. So that is the digital workflow. And here's the odd thing when it comes to industry is that we have to scale this up in 5,400 dental labs. We're not scaling up in one place in our building. It's a tremendous effort. We actually hired 7 dental technicians to go out, and they travel every day of the week to train the labs. Obviously, we start with the bigger labs, and in about 6 months, you have about 80% of the volume covered. But it is a challenge. You literally have to write directions for them. You have to give them paperwork so they can keep track of, you have to keep track of all your products that you're making. So it is quite the challenge. Okay, so converting the real world into the digital world, so we have to scan the impression. So you take a lab scanner with an impression. It uses digital light strip projection, optical detector, 5-axis, about 0.2 microns of resolution. So really don't lose any resolution here. And right when I was leaving Dentsply Sirona, they came out with an intraoral scanner for edentulous patients. The only problem with that is you have to, it requires a compression compensation factor in the software. So when you take an impression, you bite down, you get your gums, you get the compression factor. And then when you do intraoral scanner, you don't get that factor. So we have another part of the company that deals with the equipment, so they figured that out. We worked with them on providing them data, but you have to put that into the software. And there's another factor. We have a compensation factor we have to put in the software. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then you get the output of the STL file. So then we also had to create tooth libraries. So we chose 2 tooth lines that we made. The one we currently have, it's called Portrait IPN. And so we take the entire line and we would scan it with micro CT, and then we would put it into the in-lab software, which is our software at Dentsply Sirona. And then we also put it into our competitor software, so 3Shape and ExoCAD. So if a lab used any of those 3 softwares, they would have access to our tooth library. Now, the issue with Portrait IPN, it was made for traditional dentures. They're really long, and so when you're 3D printing, after you create the design, you could see that it'll create holes in the bottom of the sockets because they're too long. Okay, that happened about 50% of the time. So what we did is we created real-life teeth that are molded. They're inspired for 3D printing. We made them shorter. All right, so now that when we made them shorter, 90% of the time you didn't get any breakthrough in the bottom of your pocket. So that's how we overcame that. So creating the tooth libraries is one thing, and we had to do 6 different tooth libraries. The other thing is validating them. So once they go into the tooth libraries, you have to print out every single combination and make sure that the teeth in the libraries aren't backwards, upside down, that everything's aligning. You don't have a 10-degree posterior tooth as opposed to a 33-degree angle posterior tooth in the wrong spot. So you literally have to print them, make the teeth, make sure make the denture, make sure everything fits. All right, so all libraries were pre-occluded posterior designs. So we made, I think, 62 pre-occluded posterior designs. So you can select your posterior design that you wanted to use. So you didn't have to spend a lot of time aligning your posterior teeth. All software partners received patented structure reinforcement designs. So one of the big problems we had, one of the big hurdles we had to overcome was warpage of the denture. And you can see in the image here, we have these T-bars that are going across the denture in the center. And so we needed those T-bars not only during the 3D printing process, but if you remember the post-curing process is heat and UV. So that heat could cause warping as well. So we patented those. We actually got a patent on those. And it turns out that everybody just uses them for free. So anyways, so we're sharing. And then here's the other compensation factor that was really cool as a person who has a lot of experience with polymers. So polymers, when they polymerize, they shrink. And so you just figure out what that shrinkage factor is, you put it in the software, and when you hit print, it compensates for it. So I just thought that was really cool. I was like, that's just awesome. Makes life a lot easier. Okay, so we started off with carbon clip technology, and we worked with them because they proved to us relatively quickly that they can make isotropic parts. As you know, when you 3D print anything and you're using DLP, you tend in the Z direction, you tend to have weakness because it's layer by layer. And so this is not layer by layer. It's like running a movie. And so essentially, the platform is made out of, I think it's proprietary, but I think it's made out of a fluorosilicone, which it bleeds oxygen through it. So at the interface, it kind of kills the polymerization, but obviously the UV light is still crushing it. And so it runs like a movie, essentially, as opposed to layer by layer. So that's how you kind of get the isotropic parts. So it's a 2-hour print, 12 dentures per print, and it produces isotropic devices. And so this is the part that I think is just, well, this is the second coolest part of this presentation, but 1,800 printers required to print every denture base, the pink base, in the United States. So market's demanding efficiency, they just got it. It's kind of a crazy stat. And, but that's with 2 shifts. I cheated a little bit, so that's 16 hours. Okay, so the 5-component system, we'll get into the materials now. So, the pink ink itself is a polyurethane base polymer with rubber impact modifier in it. It's optimized to the M-series printer, 12 vouchers in 2 hours. We did exceed the ISO standard. We'll go through that data with the fracture toughnesses. The accuracy is engineered to 50 to 100 microns, and there's 5 different shades of the pink ink. Everyone's different, so we need the different shades. And the company came up with this is a marketing term, true color technology. So our shades don't fade over time. So we have some proprietary technology in there that prevents that from happening. And the bottle is approximately 47 arches. And it's only $500 a bottle, so you can do the math on that. It's pretty inexpensive. So for the Lucitone digital print, we looked at accuracy right out of the bottle, and so we'll go through some color mapping that we did to prove that. We studied the strength and the aesthetics, and we'll go through some instron measurements that we did. And the secret weapon is that this ended up being a smart polymer. And so clearly somebody from marketing likes Batman from the 70s, and they called it body activated material, or BAM. And so we'll talk about that data as well. So the reason we had to add the structures to support the support structures in the denture was we had to worry about warpage and accuracy. And so basically what you do is you 3D print your STL, you take your device, you rescan it, and you overlay the original STL with the printed STL, and you look for accuracy. And so as you can see, our accuracy, once we got everything figured out with warpage, and also you have the compensation factor in there, was excellent. So we're extremely excited about this. This was about a 6-month journey to figure this out, this part of it. So then we looked at some instron compression testing. The really cool thing about 3D printing is, sometimes you have to do sample prep on instron. You can just 3D print your sample prep. You don't need to cut into it. You don't need to add little levers on it. You just 3D print the samples the way you want them. And so we take the posterior of the denture and we squeeze it together. And so our Lucitone digital print, it fractured about 400 newtons, but it moved 30 millimeters before it did that. And the competitor, which is low impact material, 250 newtons at 5.5 millimeters, just to show you what that looks like. So the first image is before it starts, and the second image is right before it breaks. And I mean, that's just pretty dramatic. And then if you look at what's broken, you can actually fix that. So you can repair that denture if it's a nice clean break like that. And then you can see competitor A. So you guys aren't surprised, it just shattered like glass, right? So then if you remember that ISO document, you talk about work of fracture. If you're higher than 900, you're high impact, high resistance to fracture, or if you blow, you're low impact. So that's what that 900 number is there. So that's the standard across there. The next 2 bars on the chart are traditional dentures. So Lucitone, it's up here. The Lucitone HIPAA and the Lucitone 199. Our traditional dentures that Dentsply Sirona made work at fractures above 900, below 1500. At room temperature, this product, the 3D printed denture is 1529, but at 37 degrees, it's 3047. So this is, and again, you can be the first in anything if you put adjectives in front of something, but so this is the first 3D printed smart polymer that was cleared by the FDA. So that's pretty cool to say, I think. So I'll tell a story here. So this wasn't done on purpose. I wish I could say that we started off trying to make a smart polymer. So it was the spring of 2018, and we work in a 1950s building with an 1850s HVAC system. You would come in sometimes in the morning, and it would be 95 degrees. Or you could come in, and you guys know this very well. You can see your breath. You guys see your breath 9 months out of the year in Buffalo. And so we were getting fracture toughnesses from 1,000 to 2,500. And if you guys take a second to look at the whole workflow of this, to try to figure out where something like that could be happening would require a massive DOE that would take 5 years to do. There's so many inputs to try to figure this out. So we broke it into, not knowing what was going on, we broke it into parts. We looked at the printer, we looked at the post-processing, we looked at the ink. Is it separating? There's something goofy going on there. And so we spent 2 months trying to figure this out. At the end of the first month, I said to the team, maybe it's cosmic radiation. We don't really know what's going on here. That was a joke. It went over better with my team. We really didn't have an idea of what was going on. And at the end of this, and by the way, I was asked to mention this, we had a meeting every day at 4 o'clock for this project, because it was a $10 million project. And as a VP of R&D, I was in that meeting every single day from 4 to 5 o'clock. And we sometimes went late into the night. Anybody who had kids had to go home. But a handful of us would stay there and talk deep into the night during these 2 months to try to figure out what was going on here. And at the end of the second month, we're in a meeting, and I said, I think I got it. And everyone's like, what is it? And he goes, you guys really don't know? And it's been 2 months, right? So I said, I think we have a smart polymer. And so scientists came in the next day at 7 o'clock in the morning, and he put a water bath on the Instron. And he started doing fracture toughness, a lot of samples. And by 2 o'clock, he was in my office with a nice curve, looks like a pH curve actually. And we had a smart polymer, and it was a really good day. It was a really good day. All right, so being in that meeting every day at 4 o'clock, I had concerns, and I said, guys, what if we drink ice water? Are we gonna go below 900? No, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it, Dan. So I'm not one of those guys who brings things up like a couple times, but I did. I brought it up like 5 times. I said, finally, okay, meet us in the lab tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I said, okay. And so they took an impression of the roof of my mouth, and they made a device with a thermocouple in it. And then they laid out ice water, slushies, and ice cream in front of me. And so I had this wire coming out of my mouth. I would not let anybody take pictures. You can imagine what I look like. And I did the experiment, and we never got below 21 degrees C in my mouth. And I had forgotten about these things called nerves and brain freeze. So it was fine. We were never going to get below 900 in the mouth. And but it was a fun experiment to do. And now I kind of wish I did take a picture of that. All right, so the really cool thing about this is actually 4D printing, right? So you got X, Y, Z, and then you have fracture toughness as your fourth dimension, and so this is still the #1 product on the market. There's nothing even close to it, and the story of having a smart polymer hasn't been matched yet. And we have a couple patents throughout this project, the supports, and then the material itself are 2 of the really big ones. Okay, so now the teeth, the molded teeth that are made for 3D printing. So they're a unique design, and so they call it intagular breakthrough. So when you can see that the teeth are breaking through the back of the denture, that's what happens when you use the traditional denture teeth I talked about earlier. So we made these shorter, so that happens 40–50% of the time with the traditional denture teeth. With this design of these molded teeth, it only happens only happens 10% of the time after that. And then when you 3D print teeth, it'll eliminate the last 10%. All right, so at this point, we were not 3D printing teeth, but we always get asked the question, what about the other 10%? Well, you can still make traditional denture, or you can now you can use 3D printed teeth. So there's 14 uppers and lowers. There's 12 posteriors, both at 10-degree angle on the posterior teeth and 33-degree angle. And there's 18 shades. So when you think about the inventory you have to have in your dental lab, it's enormous. And then on top of that, if you're going to keep not only the 3D one, you can also keep the longer version as well. You just doubled your inventory, and it's massive. It takes up a lot of space. So, but the reason why you might want to use the longer teeth, if you're in that 50%, is just adhesion. You want to make sure you got a good adhesion to get more surface area. So, like as I mentioned earlier, there's the key features. There's a unique position locator system, so it's easy to plug it in. 12 minutes or less to fuse all those teeth in, so it's much faster. IPN technology. So as I mentioned, IPN stands for Interpenetrating Network, and as I mentioned, this is layer by layer. So there's little time allowed for one layer to penetrate into the next layer to fuse those 3 layers together. We'll talk about wear resistance. Again, the 3 CAD libraries that we use are InLab, 3Shape, and exocad. And I was wrong on the pre-occluded libraries. I think I said 36, it was 63 pre-occluded libraries. So, and then the 3D printed teeth were launched in 2022 after COVID. So interestingly, this product launched in February of 2020. So it launched for 2 months, then it stopped because of COVID, and then it was relaunched about a year and a half later. Okay, so then we did some wear testing at Boston University. And obviously, the lower the number, the better, because of the weight loss. We had our IPN teeth. We had a competitor, Denka, that was a 3D printed ink. And then we had Ivoclar, I think they're around here somewhere in Buffalo. And they had a puck that you would mill to make a tooth arch. And so Boston University did 100,000 cycles, and these were the results. And when you first get the results, you take a step back and go, okay, 0.15% reduction in weight, 0.45, so what? That's nothing. It's nothing, right? And so you say, nah, they're good enough. And then, but 100,000 cycles equals 6 months. All right, so if you go, let's just, give me linearity on this next statement. Let's just say we go to 1 million cycles, which is 5 years of wear. And so it's 1.5% of reduction of weight loss, 4.5% and 5%. Now, that's still not a lot, right? So if 5% weight loss on front lower teeth, you might start getting an angle out, right? And while that doesn't look good if you're on a fixed budget, you're not going to care, right? But where a dentist cares and the labs care is bruxers, people who grind their teeth. So 30% of us in this room grind our teeth. You can Google it. I did yesterday just to confirm I remembered the right number. And so when they see a number like this where the wear is 230 or 270%, they're always going to go with the lower one. It's a marketing thing, but it is in reality, it's an issue. You don't want your customer to come back in 2 or 3 years with a denture and it's destroyed. So you usually go with the best. And this is the reason why we didn't launch. We had 2 things, but they were comparable to the other 2 competitors. We really wanted something that was really good. So the team waited to 2022 to launch those products. Okay, so the fuse system is a 1, 2, 3 step system to fuse the teeth into the denture base. Fuse step 1, basically you're taking a monomer, you're brushing it on the tooth, and so that soaks into the interface of the tooth. The second one, fuse, goes into the pocket that has a free radical initiator. And then the third one is, and this was a very important one, is that it goes around the interface between the tooth and the pink ink. I should mention that the second fuse actually is colored the same. There's 5 of them that match the color of the denture base. But the third one is the most important. It goes around the interface between the tooth, it's clear, and the denture base, and that keeps biofilms from forming. So if you didn't completely get, it filled up around the edge, it just coats over it, and you don't have to worry about biofilm. And it also helped with a fracture if for some reason somebody tried to force the wrong tooth into the wrong hole and they got a little crack. That's an opportunity for crack propagation, and this would heal that too. So again, that took 12 minutes. It takes 12 minutes to pop them in there and then do all of this. So we're pretty excited about how fast this went. So here's our in-lab speed cure processing unit. The really nice thing about this is 10 years before I took over this role, they launched this product for a UV curing denture, which never went anywhere, but they still had this product on the shelf. And it worked really nice for the 3D printing system. We actually had to create new software, validate the software because we had to update it. And we gave it a facelift, and we sell a ton of these because you can only do 2 arches every 26 minutes, which means in 2 hours you're doing 8 arches and you're printing 12 in the printer. So you need 2 of these basically in order to match the speed of the printer. Okay, so if you want to do a try-in, and this comes between, after you do the impression and before you make the final denture, you can do this. They do this in a traditional workflow. But like I said earlier, once they've made a few dentures and they skip this step, you really don't need a try-in. But the cool thing about the try-in is that it comes in a couple different color shades. You can look at what you can see it in the mirror, see what it looks like, before you actually buy the final one. And it could serve as a backup denture too, in case your dog eats your denture. So it's a nice to have, but we don't sell a lot of it. Okay, so this is the number of products. It's a complete digital workflow. So we had to make real-world molded teeth suitable for 3D printed dentures. There's 6 validated digital tooth libraries, which took about 6 months. 5 shades of denture base. That was a 510K from the FDA. 6 shades of try-in denture. The 1, 2, 3 fuse system. Each fuse system was a 510K, so 4 510Ks, and we had to do a UV oven software validation. So we had 18 of the best scientists and engineers complete this project in 22 months, not 24 months. And when we were going through the whole building issue and the fracture toughness going all over the place, I was like, man, this is going to be close. But we did it, and today it's the #1 product on the market, even kind of launched in 22, 2 years later. And I do think the industry is still on track to make 50% of the dentures by 3D printing. So pretty cool. So it's the first generation of digital dentures is now complete, but now you need 3,600 printers in the US because we're printing tooth arches, so the number went up by 2. So now I want to spend a little time talking about my current company. It's called Regenerative Biosciences. We're B2B, so that means we make products for other companies, like a Medtronic, like a Stryker, Smith & Nephew, a Dentsply Sirona. So Dentsply Sirona is actually one of our customers. And so we have these companies come to us and they say, hey, can you make this regenerative medicine product? And every year we work with 1 or 2 startups that we take in, and we basically charge you for development at cost. What we want is the manufacturing on the back end. So we have R&D, regulatory, and manufacturing, so we can bring a product to market from start to finish, and then you guys go sell it. Like our partner will go sell that product. So we have 3 business models. We actually do come up with our own ideas, and we take those ideas to the end and we find a partner. We do contract development. So a company comes to us and say, can you make this for us? I would say 70% of the time they have no idea how to make it. They ask us to figure it out. 30% of the time they say make this, and that 30% of the time, most of the time it doesn't work when they say make this. We have to figure out how to make it work. And then we have contract manufacturing. So a company, I'll just make it up, like Boston Scientific would come to us and say, we have this manufacturing process over here. We want you guys to make it. You're the experts in biologics, and we want you to, and regenerate. We want you guys to make it. So our R&D is not involved at all in that at all. So that's a third kind of business approach that we take. So these are some of our customers. So we have 125 customers. This company is not a research company, a research experimental company. We have actually 75 products that we grow tissue. So we don't do any cell work. We will in the future, but we use biopolymers and biodegradable polymers to do regenerative medicine on tissues. We'll talk about that in a second. But these are some of our top customers out of the 125. So we work in the ear, nose, and throat. So we have biodegradable polymers that go into the nasal cavity and stop bleeding. We work in oncology, and so we have a sponge we make with a partner that goes in the dura. They have a small radioactive seed that goes in that, and then that radioactive seed just kills the cancer in that local area. So we work in oncology with that partner. Cardiovascular we work in with collagen patches. Spine and orthopedics, we have bone graft substitutes, so those can fill orthopedic defects or fuse spines together, we don't do any hardware, so we're not doing metals at all. Advanced wound care, so if anybody has any wound care ideas, happy to work with you. And we work about 6 different companies in wound to grow back wound tissue. We have 70% market share with our partners in the US for dental. So we have mineral, we can grow back bone, and we also have films, both synthetic and collagen-based or biopolymer-based, to grow back your periodontum. And then we have general and suture brushes, hemostats, sealants in the general and gastroenterology area. And sports medicine is our biggest growing area right now. So we have tendon repairs, meniscus and cartilage repair as well. And actually, we'll talk about the meniscus in a second, but I was hoping I could talk about that this week as well, but we're very close to getting approval on that. So some of our core capabilities, if you're a customer that needs any of those adjectives in that column, wrap, regenerative device, something to adhere, anti-infective, that's kind of the customers we're looking for. Our technology base, we have collagen. So we do reconstituted collagen. That's where you create a dispersion. You can mold it create dispersion by changing the pH, and you can mold it and process it. Extracellular matrices are just purified tissues. We do xenograft only, so we don't do any human. So these are mostly bovine and porcine. And then we have custom polymers. We acquired a company in the Netherlands that does biodegradable polymers, custom patented biodegradable polymers. And so we have copolyesters, polycaprolactone, polylactide polymers, polyurethanes, tissue adhesive, polyfumarates, and then we can mix these products. So we can mix mineral collagen for bone healing, or we can mix polymer with collagen for very strong ligament and tendon repair. And then we also have biological additives. We have peptides that we make. We have a peptide synthesizer. We can make custom peptides as well to add more bioactivity to our biopolymers. In our processes area, we have freeze dryers. We can do solvent freeze drying as well, which is very rare. You need the right plumbing for that. Surface treatment, we do electrospinning, we do 3D printing, bioprinting, polymer 3D printing, and so we can make a number of different types of products. We do have a drug delivery product right now. We're delivering a steroid, and we're just getting into human clinical trials there. That's pretty exciting. So we have a cell biology lab. We started about 3 years ago. So for example, if we're starting to formulate our products in the hard tissue area, we'll use cells and look at which growth factors are being expressed, and it helps guide us to our formulation, to our final formulation. So we have about 15 to 20 assays now at this point that we use to help guide to optimize our formulation before we go into animals or before we go into humans. So it's a really, really nice lab to have. In the company, it's not small. We have about 300 employees. We make about 4 million devices a year now. The company's 25 years old, so about $25 million devices since it started. So I'd like to thank you for your time and attention, and if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, questions for Dan? Sarah in the back, I think.
So, I don't personally know anyone that uses dentures, but I do know a lot of people that have worn retainers or wear retainers, so could this technology be applicable?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, between subtractive manufacturing for, glass polymer composites or ceramics for subtractive manufacturing, and then 3D printing polymers, dental is going to be one of the first industries completely digitized, and I think by 2030, everything will be made digitally.
Welcome back to Buffalo.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Go Bills. Go Bulls. Yep.
So if I understand correctly, first you make the mold, and then you're putting the teeth in the mold, right?
Are you talking about here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we 3D print this, and then the arches, and then we put the teeth in the arches.
Is there, naive question, is there a way to 3D print the whole thing at the same time?
Yeah, so that would be inkjet printing. Okay, so a product just launched 6 months ago, I think, from Stratasys, 3D printing company. I still keep track of this, even though I'm not in the industry anymore. I still keep track of this stuff, but it's low impact. So while you can 3D print,
What makes it low impact?
so the fracture toughness is below 900 joules per meter squared.
Why is the printing affecting the impact?
Oh, which is when you want a high impact product, you need to put rubber impact modifier in it to raise the fracture toughness, and the rubber impact modifier can't go through the nozzle. So I visited Stratasys once in Israel, and they said, we're making our nozzle smaller. And I said, guys, you're going backwards. You need to make your nozzle bigger so we can put rubber impact modifier in there to make high impact. And they still went smaller. They want better resolution. They want smaller, so better resolution. And they could put an ink in a certain voxel, so they can make it just look beautiful. So the dentures do look really nice, but they break easily. Great question. Yes.
You mentioned that you had to submit about 4 or 5 10K
Yep.
submissions for approval.
Mhm.
Curious about your validation verification testing for the inks.
Mhm.
What exactly was FDA looking for?
That's a good question. So they were obviously looking for biocompatibility. All right, so they're looking for that we could validate that it could be, that what we said we're going to make over again and again consistently. So looking for consistency, and then they're looking for feedback from dentists and what they think about the technology. So but remember, we have to validate this at dental labs. I mean, it's a big deal to take on. And that's why we hired those seven dental technicians to go out and kind of work with the dental labs to validate this in their labs. It's the first time I've ever done that. It's the only time I've ever done it. Most of the time, you're validating a process that's down the hall, around the corner, and you can go, do the validation right on site. It's a good question. Yep.
I have a question, not scientific question.
Sure.
So you have a big company making a lot of products, which some of them are simpler than the others, right?
Mhm.
I was wondering if you might answer, do you make more money out of this simpler products or the more advanced products? That was my curiosity.
Yeah, it depends, right? So a lot of time, marketing people like to talk about margin, but when you have a 30% margin on a $1,000 product versus 30% margin on a $200 product, the cash is a lot different, right? So the profit's a lot different. So what I would say is like dental is commoditizing very fast. Even this product here, I went to one of the biggest dental labs in the country. I presented this presentation very similar to this, and he didn't even know the price, and he said it's got to be cheaper. So these labs are huge, and they can economy of scales. They can demand cheaper prices, and this is, as you know, is a $10 million project, and they're already asking for lower prices. So dental does commoditize relatively quickly, but if you're working in cardio, you're going to charge a lot of money for those products, even if they're inexpensive to make, because your life's at risk here. Versus this is is a dental product, but they are making a lot of correlations between dental health and your overall health as well. So I think that'll help sell products in the future. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I like to give a speech. No, I'm kidding. I come from, so you know what the basis of the question is, I come from specializing in adsorption with the purification systems, normally inorganic. But when you say adhere and desorb, I was wondering what you mean by that.
So adhere, what we mean is, for example, I'll give you an example. We have a Dura product that is a sealant. Sealants are PMAs, so you have to do human clinical trials. So the product is a polymer, a biodegradable polymer that's porous, and it has a coating on the surface that has NAH groups which react with lysine on the collagen on your Dura. So you hold it down, and it adheres, and it seals the brain from any outside impact. What was your other question? Absorb? Is Desorb?
Yeah, I don't know if anything desorbed.
I didn't see Desorb up there, but if it is, but Desorb, I mean, I don't know what Desorb means, but as far as regenerative medicine, I can't think of why we would Desorb. Okay, that's all right.
All right,
Any question?
let's
Thank you.
again. Don't go anywhere, there's more pictures.
Okay.
Right, so the most important part of these symposia is presenting Dan and the students with the ceremonial
cool.
crystal buffalo. So they stopped making this particular style, so this is a precious thing. I don't know what the impact toughness is, so I'm not gonna drop it. But yeah, if we could give this to Dan, and then if we could get the students to also come up and get their ceremonial buffaloes. Kritika, I picked up your buffalo first.
Oh, fine.
You should go first because I randomly selected your buffalo.
Okay.
You guys are lucky, you're gonna get a different buffalo for this than the one that you get when you graduate. All right. And Finn, great job.